Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Everyday Discipleship podcast. If you're just joining us for the first time, my name is Maggie Maryday, and I'm the host of this wonderful podcast. And I have with us today Lynsey Pippen. She and her husband and her family are the founders of the Little Bus Book company, which is an independent mobile bookstore. And more specifically, you've been working a lot with a nonprofit that you're trying to start, an initiative that you're trying to get underway called the No Covers Project. So we'll talk a lot more about that as we get into it, but I'm really excited to have Lynsey on. Her story is super cool and how her whole family has gotten involved in this project, and I hope you all enjoy. So Lynsey, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. To start off, can you tell us a little bit about you and share some of your story with us?
Sure. Well, my name is Lynsey Pippen. My husband, Michael, and I, with our two boys, Luke and Nolan, who are now 12 and 13, moved to Lakeland about 5 years ago. We are from Louisiana, South Louisiana for myself, my husband in the farm country of North Louisiana. We went to college together in Louisiana Tech University and lived in Ruston, the college town, for quite a while after we got married. And he had the opportunity to stay in the same industry as in agriculture, but change jobs into more of he's in manufacturing. So they had an office here in Central Florida. And so they told us to move anywhere in Central Florida as long as he can travel. The airports were close. So we visited Lakeland and we said, this looks like a nice place, you know. You go around the lakes, and I think Mayfair was going on or something about the same time we were doing that. So it looked like a nice place. So somehow, you know, everybody says that, you know, we always say it's a God thing. This is where we're supposed to land. And so over the last 5 years, you know, our boys are in school here. My husband's been traveling. COVID changed that a good bit for him, of course. But when we moved, I am a speech therapist by trade, and I did online speech therapy for quite a while, and last January decided to step down just for the dynamics of our family. My boys have high-functioning autism, so they do go to a specialized school, which is quite a commute for us. It's still in Lakeland, but it's a commute. With Michael traveling, he works from home as well, and so we just have discovered we have a different family dynamic. And even with me working part-time online, I was seeing students in Louisiana and California, you know, the time difference, it just got to be a lot. And we decided we needed to do something different for our family. No better, no worse, just different. So we kind of came up with the idea of Little Bus Books, knowing in the back of our minds over the last few years, we noticed that Lakeland was a huge supporter of local businesses. I mean, just the community here, there's always something going on. We laugh because we live in the central part of town, so close to downtown, and we're in the big city here, you know, compared to most people would tell us this is the country, and we're like, you have no idea. You know, my husband grew up on a farm. So like I get excited. We walk different places. I'm a runner. I've started, you know, and so just, but that was kind of the limits we had with both working from home, our kids going to school in a different neighborhood. We have a huge support system in our neighborhood, but realized that we just wanted to grow with the city. We wanted to become more involved. And how could we do that? Michael is very business oriented. That's his job. He's in business. And so I was kind of dependent on him to say, okay, well, this is how we can start a business. Now, what exactly do we want to do? And part of our story on how we started Little Bus was that for our anniversary each year, we visit a different state. And so we call it 50 states in 50 years.
I love it.
Now, when we were in Louisiana, one year was Louisiana, right? We had like no money when we got married, right? And so we'll do like a bigger state, and then we do a couple of smaller ones. Well, 2020, we went to Kansas. And people say, what's in Kansas? And at that point, it didn't matter because nothing was going on in 2020 anyway, right? And it was in the fall, so we knew we were kind of clear. We still brought our masks and we were kind of clear. So we spent a lot of time hiking and just kind of sitting at the restaurants and different places that were open. And we always call that our dream time because there's no kids, there's no I want to say real adult responsibilities as far as parenting or work. And, so we can kind of together, we talk about things that we've, done in life or, our dreams for our future and things like that. We're big dreamers. And so that's kind of how it came up. We visited, we always find ourselves visiting independent bookstores in towns. Like we'll go to big cities, but also go to smaller ones to kind of get the local feel. And we found ourselves going into bookstores and realized, well, we don't do that at home. Now, at the time, we didn't really have, we have a few used bookstores and things, but really never even looked for bookstores in Lakeland because we weren't avid enough readers to know what we wanted to read. So when you go in there, we didn't have hours to spend. So that was also part of our business dynamic that we started. So, and then we were sitting there and Michael said, what if we started small? What if we did kind of like the food trucks, and mobile bookshops have been around for decades, not centuries, but decades, going back to libraries. They used to have library buses and things like that. And so we just kind of banked that as a dream. And on our way home, and after probably, 3 or 4 months after, we would write down our ideas, how we could do it, what kind of business makeup, and, would we have, and never really gave it a second thought. And then when I decided to step down for my job in January, so I was thinking of what could I do, what could I do next? And knowing that it had to make a decision family-wide, essentially. And one day I came home, it was probably March of 2021, and Michael said, hey, I called the farmer's market to see if they would let a bus, let us have a bus at the farm, at the market, because before we started this mobile thing, we had to figure out if we would even be able to get out there. And they said, yes, they would, let us do that, and we can start in May. We're like, okay. We don't have a business right now. And so actually we received, so I was like, well, we knew we couldn't actually start with a bus. So we said, how can we get this thing going and figure out if people even buy books in Lakeland? There's this big thing saying nobody buys books, anymore. Everybody uses their Kindles or, computers. And so, no April Fool's joke, April 1st, we got our LLC, and we're like, okay, I guess we're doing this thing. So we got some tables and a tent, and I did this little cheesy logo on Canva because, we have zero budget right now, and we ordered books that we enjoyed. I did a little research on what was popular and that kind of thing. And so May the 1st of 2021, we set up at the Lakeland Farmers Market, and our first buyer was actually from church. It was actually it was one of our friends and one of the ministers here at church, and so we were really excited. Okay, somebody bought a book, and Michael said, now it's not. He said it'll be a real success when a stranger buys a book, because of course your family, and we love that our family and friends came out to support us, but he's like, a stranger has to buy a book for us to know this is going to happen. And I am actually friends today with the first stranger that bought a book,
I love that.
So we found that proof of concept that people are still buying books. Now we have been pleasantly surprised with the demographics that are buying books. And so we did that for a while and decided to start looking for a bus. And if you've seen our website, we don't actually have a bus. It is a camper. It's a vintage camper. And mainly because I didn't want to drive a bus. And if your bus breaks down, then you don't have a shop. And having been at the market tent to table, we knew the size, made a big difference. So in July, we found that. Michael did. I designed it, but I can't really take much credit because he essentially did all the hard work. With his full-time job, he was out there in the middle of the night, renovating this camper for us to roll out, pun intended, in October. So we did the Buena Market here, which has been one of our most successful part of our community as being a part of Buena Market. We rolled out in October, and that's been a big game changer for us. Now, part of it, kind of getting into our mission with Little Bus, I discussed how we don't go to bookshops often because we're not very avid readers and we don't know what we want to read. So it's intimidating for us. And so part of that was being intentional about our selections, not overwhelming people, not giving people decision fatigue because they're at a market, they're shopping other places. They kind of want to come in and just look. We went a step further with that and said, we need to branch out with what we're reading. And we make it our mission to help broaden cultural perspectives based on what people are already reading. So you may like contemporary fiction, but your contemporary fiction book may have individuals that are a different race, that are a different religious background, that may be in a different country, things like that. Right. So we look at kind of helping people branch out and kind of learn something along the way. It's kind of an unobtrusive way of helping people branch their cultural knowledge, right? Because that was one of the things we knew we needed to work on as well. And so we still read and review a lot of our books for that. Last summer, which was our whole intention when we started No Covers, free mobile bookshop. So what we do is, along with going to the markets with our bookshop, we also give out books. We take donations, and essentially just started with a truck full of books that our family in Louisiana gave us last year when we were there. Came home, called up, Talbot House was the first place we called up and said, hey, we have some books. We want to just give out some books. Right. Our personal intentions is that we wanted to branch out in the community and meet people that weren't already in our circle, that weren't just in our neighborhood or at our church or our kids' schools. Right. And you can't just, it's really hard to get into that unless you kind of have a platform, right? And so Talbot House was very supportive of that. Took the boys, took a table, which we still do, and just put out a bunch of books, and at mealtime twice a month we go and visit with the residents and some of the guests that come in and give out books. Since then we've branched to Visti. When they give out their groceries, I go out there with a book table, so when they're going to get their groceries I can get books. We go to Gospel Village. We participate in their Thursday night meals, and what we're working on there is doing kind of like a free little free library. Have you heard of the little free libraries? Yes. Yeah. So we're not official with that, but setting up something where we still go once a month to visit and eat on Thursday nights, one Thursday night a month, but also refill that so they can have that throughout the month. So we're branching out with how we are doing our free mobile bookshop, not just going and setting up books everywhere. It works at some places, other places, it's just not the dynamic of when we're going. So essentially what we're doing is connecting with other nonprofits for events they're already having or things they already have going on. And we are there just to add value. We can't save the world or save anybody's life with books, right? It's not providing them a shelter. It's not providing people with food, but it is providing them maybe with a source of entertainment, maybe a source of company. Everybody loves when our boys go. Right. If anybody's met our Nolan, he speaks to anyone and everyone, and just, they just eat him up because, today we went somewhere and he was offering everyone coffee and he was fixing our coffee, and, and our Luke is a little more shy, but they enjoy seeing him there. When people speak to him now, then he speaks back and he's familiar with people. And in fact, he and Michael do Talbot House together. And so they're also, not only are we trying to add value to another, to those partnerships, but they're also adding value to us, and to our boys, and helping them teach about community. And Michael and I are learning just a totally just different perspective of the world. It's no secret that Lakeland does have a large homeless community, and my perspectives of that, I'm getting like chills, are just 100% turned from what people think just when they see someone at a red light asking for money. Just having met and sat down with people, and maybe I can't relate to that, and I can't. We're in a situation where we're comfortable. We don't worry about being homeless, but we have these books, and maybe we've read the same book, and there's our conversation.
So true.
Our favorite authors,
Such a
our
good
favorite,
connection.
and so another place we go is the Mission of Winter Haven. And last month, Michael is starting reading articles and different things with them. And I think we did a National Geographic about the national parks. And while reading that, we also heard other people's stories while they were kind of tough on their luck at that time. They had traveled and seen these national parks and going here and, and were able to share stories about their family or when they were younger or places they saw in the national parks, so realizing things that do connect people or these broader issues seem to, maybe you can't relate to each other, but little simple things that we're learning just through books and just being our platform has been helpful. Another thing we're doing with the free bookshop is we're helping to revitalize libraries. So today we were at Trinity Apartments of Lakeland, and I met them through Visti. And I had been going to Trinity for a couple of years and delivering meals right next to this door that said activities. And until we started the free bookshop there, they said, we have a library. And I had been passing this, nobody, like residents came today and had no idea this library had been there since they had even opened.
Wow.
And so part of our mission is that we revitalize the library for them. Just got a table, just made it nicer, took old books out. It's a retirement community that didn't need books, business books, so that people were gracious giving donations, but trying to make it more relevant. We're going to keep up, once a month we'll go and keep up with keeping it organized and giving them newer books and things like that. So that's what we do a lot with our donations is we kind of sift them through the different places. And so, because we go to Talbot House so often, we don't want to just be cycling through the same books over and over again. So getting new stock in is always, is always helpful. It's kind of one of our missions with that, which kind of ties into Little Bus Books, because while we're intentional about our bookshop and the books they have in there, we're also intentional about curating books for the individuals and families we serve for our free mobile bookshop as well. So that's kind of been an interesting little twist that we didn't necessarily intend for from the beginning, but realizing like, hey, we want to set up something just as if they were having a bookshop, going into the bookstore and things like that. And we mainly, I mentioned that the homeless ministries have been a big part of our free mobile bookshop, but again, senior center style, the senior community. And then now we're starting with the Pay Center for Girls. We're helping with their library now that we've finished another one. So it's mainly nonprofits that need to add a little bit of value that may be of adding value, or areas in our community that don't have adequate access to libraries or bookstores. That kind of thing. That's kind of the individuals we serve with that.
It's so, your story is so cool, and that what started as just a dream that you and your husband had on one of your dream trips, has now not only been manifested into a business, but is also impacting our community through the gift of books. And I think what you said about, individuals experiencing homelessness, and you see someone on the corner, or in downtown Lakeland, we have a large homeless community within that area asking for money. And it's, I think, so easy for us to just kind of say, oh, I don't have anything to do with that, or maybe we give a few bucks or whatever, and we kind of go on about our day. But you're kind of humanizing them but that person loves the classics, or that person loves a good chick lit novel, or that person's loved Junie Blume when they were a little kid, just like you love Junie Blume now. And that's such a humanizing experience by making that connection. So I really appreciate that you mentioned that. So what's next for Little Bus and for No Covers? What are your what are your hopes and dreams for the next couple of years?
And I think, of course, we talk about, we don't, Michael and I don't really talk about 5 years ahead, because what we have learned, and we learned very quickly, is we thought the business would be one thing, and the community has made it something different. And it's been a positive different. Not that what we were thinking wasn't positive, but it's been an interesting, we just kind of let the community decide that as things shift. Right. We've kind of, for instance, our largest demographic that purchases books, which we thought we were way off when we thought the demographic of the books, are 20 to 40 year olds, because they're in, they are still using computers a lot in school. So when people read for fun, younger generations read for fun, they want a book, So that's just kind of an example of like the community has kind of led us that way. Markets, going to different markets has led us that way. Opportunities. So what we've kind of been going on are opportunities that we're getting at the markets to ultimately turn Little Bus into, I'm sorry. What am I going to say?
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Okay. So ultimately, for Little Bus Books, we want to make a nonprofit. We want to make it into a nonprofit. There's some logistics we haven't been able to get to just yet, but we want to make it a nonprofit to focus on the free mobile bookshop side. We are already doing that. Our revenue is going to the free mobile bookshop, and we're doing donations and things. It's just a matter of the letters and numbers that go along with that. So that is our ultimate goal. We are going to continue the mobile bookshop aspect of it because, as I was kind of trying to say earlier, we are the people. How we get into No Covers in the free mobile bookshop have been us meeting people at the mobile bookshop. So we go to markets and different things. People find out kind of what we're doing, not necessarily a story, but they'll just literally come up and go, "What's going on here? Like, what is this, a bookstore? Like, what are you doing here?" They don't understand exactly what's going on. And when we explain, they're like, "Oh, I work for a nonprofit. Oh, have you heard of such and such? Oh, do you take book donations? I'm a local author. And so we meet so many people through Little Bus markets that essentially get us to the No Covers. And so I foresee the big goal is to become a nonprofit, stay mobile, because going to the people instead of expecting people to come to us has been beneficial for our business, because of our business dynamic. I think there are some very successful bookstores that are brick and mortar. We don't really plan on doing that unless where we're getting now is we have so many book donations, they're piled in our dining rooms. So one of the things we may do in the next couple of years, if we can, is get a brick and mortar specifically for No Covers. Now, whether or not we open a few days a week when we happen to be there doing books, that will open up a larger, I think that'll open up more doors to be able to take more donations, get more volunteers. We do get requests for volunteers. One of our challenges with volunteers, while we love when people ask, we have a hard time finding a place for volunteers right now, because I need help sorting books, but do you really want to come to my house and sort? But so like kind of that thing, until we're kind of official, and people. A lot of times I will kind of need some help as an event, but our biggest help that we need, which we're hoping in the future, is that people want to volunteer to go out kind of, I don't want to say by themselves, but so for instance, we can only go to so many places per week. I mean, we're just, family schedules, extra other work jobs and things. We want to branch out more to more places, but are going to need people to take the lead in those places, because we can't go to all of them. And so we hope in the future, and it would, especially with the places and the individuals we serve, it will require some training as well. How do you respond to certain things, and making sure that people are out there volunteering for the right reasons, have the same values that we do, and things like that. So we foresee it hopefully becoming larger on the nonprofit side, and getting more volunteers in there. Just a little bit of right now the structure of that's kind of in the process.
Awesome. So you talked a little bit about your kids and your son, talking about how he was offering everyone coffee.
Yeah.
And you have one son who's really chatty and one son who's a little bit more shy. And you also share with us that both of your sons experience autism. How has their involvement with the business and you all including them impacted their experience and their relationship with the community?
And I think it's kind of twofold. One thing, it's helping our family to broaden, when you have children with special needs, we're different. We're not any better, worse. There's lots of families around with kids with special needs, and realize that I always think of at church here, they have the legacy jars and they have these little balls, and until, they have only so many weeks until they put these little balls in a jar, and that represents how many more weeks you have with your child until they graduate, right? So like at 11, there's this many, and then it goes down at 12 and goes down, that kind of thing. And I always had to have a weird feeling about those, because I was like, our kids aren't going to be the ones that leave at 17. They're not leaving at graduation. Like, this is a marathon for us. This is not a sprint.
Right.
For us, for Michael and I, it's opened our eyes to different than when we were growing up as, typical kids, knowing maybe we'll go to college or school or get jobs and eventually be on our own, independent. Well, I feel like our boys will one day be independent. They may not be fully independent as you or I might be.
Right.
So we'll still need some assistance with that. But one of the things that has hit us hard in the last few years, especially as they're becoming teenagers, is that we need to look. It takes them a long time to learn something. We go through the same phases every other parent does. They go through the same phases every other kid does. Sometimes it just takes a lot longer. Reading at one grade level may take 2 grade levels for them. Things like that. So it just takes a little bit longer. And so Michael and I kind of sit back and go, okay, how are we going to train them to be adults? Like, eventually they're going to have to get there. And of course we focus on academics, but we like to laugh that there's no honor roll at our school. They get the, Luke gets the people making award. He likes to make little people, but and so with that, the business has kind of helped us, almost been a platform for them as well. And for us, to figure out the dynamics of they need to learn the community. They need to learn the real world. We all learn the real world some way or another. We're just starting a lot earlier with that. One of the things is that our boys are adopted, and they are a different race. They're Roma is their race. And so they're in a community, they don't meet a lot of people that look like them. They don't meet a lot of people that, they meet kids that are adopted and, that kind of thing. But helping them not, just as Michael and I needed to learn that we can't just stay within our circle of people. And I think it's helped them a lot seeing that yes, they're different, but people are different too. They're starting to catch on that I'm different cognitively than other people. I look different than other people, especially their peers. It's a big thing right now at 12 and 13, and so branching out has helped us to teach them that there are different people in the world. And thankfully, that little bit of innocence that they still have, that they haven't caught on, as sometimes that people are a lot different, so for instance, our homeless population, we don't just go and say, oh, these people don't have a home. Like, we have to tread lightly on how we explain the individuals that we serve. Today we were at the mission in Winter Haven. There was a gentleman outside in his vehicle, and he was making some shelves for his car, because he and his wife slept in their car. He had his Christian music blaring. He had that. He took so much joy into showing Nolan, who's our little guy who talks to everybody, how to use a saw, and to help him do that. Nolan thought it was the coolest thing ever that he slept in his car, knowing, stepping back and going, Nolan would not want to sleep in a car, but how do we explain that this man, that's a different way, that, you know? And so I think it's and kind of that example shows two ways of our boys are learning the real world, but also people are learning that individuals with special needs, people that are different than them, whether that's through race or special needs or age or whatever it is, are going to be out in the real world with them. You know, and so we've learned a lot with that. Most people appreciate the boys being around and what we're trying to do. It's not always easy. The markets are insane when we try to have them out there. Some days, like literally, they get paid. Now I say paid very loosely, but you know, to them it's $1 million bucks, right? To use their business manners. Like like your only job today is use your business manners, and we talk about what that means, like how you speak to people and what you do. You know, if we're talking to a customer or someone, you know, don't interrupt, or things that you teach your teenagers anyway. But, you know, again, it takes us a little bit longer to kind of figure that out and do. So I think, you know, them learning responsibilities, they're learning money, they're learning, you know, how to speak to people. Luke, you know, now will actually talk to people when they speak to him, or even more so, like somebody will come up and I'll say, welcome to Little Boss Books, you know. The interesting thing, especially with no covers, kind of going back to that, is that he goes to Talbot House with Michael often, and he'll recognize people out on the street and say, oh, that's Mr. So-and-so, or like, oh, Dad, do they go to Talbot House? Like, he can tell something's different, but it's not a big deal to him, you know? And so just, you know, those little things, going, okay, well, maybe we're learning a little something, you know, maybe we're learning more than Mom and Dad knew at your age, you know, a lot of things we were sheltered against. But
for anyone out there listening who is maybe thinking about, I have this idea or I have this dream for this nonprofit or this business or whatever it might be, what advice would you share for them on how to just get started? I
just think, so one of the biggest things is do your research. Is this something that can be viable? Is this something that you can do given you personally, your family dynamics, whatever that may be, whether that's finances or children or, you know, whatever that kind of means. Is it feasible for your family to do, for you to do? We are low risk takers, which is very most people don't think that, but we're low risk takers, and then we take it up a notch, and then we don't know when to stop, you know. So we just keep going. So that was one of the biggest things we did. It's just started small. And that was, I mean, if we were still tent to table, I think people would still be receptive of it. You know, the little bus adds a different experience. But I think starting small, you know, is this something that your family can do? And how can you start it small just to see if it's something that will work? You know, do your research, really. I
think that's great. So my last question for you is, this podcast is called Everyday Discipleship. So what does everyday discipleship mean to you?
I think for me, it's starting at home. You know, we can't help the things that are going on in the world. We can't save the world. We can't, you know, at some point I stopped watching the news. You know, we hear these things. So I think it starts at home and how you can make an impact even in a small way. And I think when I think of discipleship, the biggest word I think of is an action. You know, it makes a difference with your actions, whether it's small actions. You know, small actions can make a big impact. Now, some of those small actions could be turned negative, but, you know, it could also make a positive impact. So I think definitely everyday discipleship is your actions. Are you... I always tell my kids, are you glorifying God in what you do? You know, they always ask what, you know, the old saying of what would Jesus do? You know, I can't necessarily answer that. I could guess, but is what you're doing glorifying God, essentially.
Well, where can we find Little Bus Books? Where can we find you?
We have everything is Little Bus Books. So Google Little Bus Books, but our website is littlebusbooks.com. We're on Instagram, Facebook at Little Bus Books. And then email is info@littlebusbooks as well. So definitely. We're always up for donations. We have a bookshop online that you can go to support us. We do collect a list of volunteers because we do need some help sometimes with our libraries and things. So there are ways that people can help, not necessarily monetarily.
Right.
Doing that.
Right.
So,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I do want to encourage you. I know you mentioned we're not saving the world with our books, but to the folks that you are impacting, it means the world. It does. So thank you so much to you and your husband for the work that you do, and to your boys for the work that they're doing to help make our world a little bit of a better place. So we appreciate it. So thank you.